Hello and welcome to Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. Here we have intimate conversations with extraordinary dance and theater artists about reimagining creativity and supporting and building community. CVJS and I walk in solidarity and as allies for equality, justice, and respect. Black Lives Matter, and let's stop Asian hate. Let's unite. I'm Helen Pickett, and today's guest is Zoe Hagler, founder of Zoe, a Pilates studio, a master Pilates teacher. We have known each other since drumroll 1983, where we were students together in San Francisco Ballet. Zoe, I'm so happy to sit here with you. It's like selfishly, these are the times I get to hang out with my friends. I force them into interviews so they sit with me for an hour.
Hey, Helen.
Hi.
Really fun to be here.
Yes, it's so good to see you. Another remarkable woman here on the show. I start every question, every interview, not every question, don't worry. Every question starts with, where are you in the world?
Well, right now, I'm actually sitting in my studio. I'm in Pasadena, in California. Yeah, I didn't stay home because everyone's sleeping, actually. and I'm fortunate to have this place to come. So I'm at my studio. I could show you if you want me to turn the camera, but we got it just right. So I think I'll leave it alone. Yeah, that's where I am. It's a lovely morning here. It's, sunny and warm and California.
It's California. It's my home state. I
Yeah,
so know it.
that's right.
What just ran through my head right now, and then I'll get you to the questions. But our driving trip, remember, I only had my learner's permit, and you were helping me. You were teaching me how to drive.
Can I say, I actually, before our driving trip, we were, I don't remember where we were. I guess it was before the trip, but it was here in California. And the first time that you took the wheel, and I do remember, I absolutely remember. I'm not going to get into it, it's too long of a story. But yeah, and then our feet on the dashboard and all kinds of crazy things.
Listening to the Stones.
Right.
Among others. Yeah. Okay. So Zoe, you are the owner of your Pilates studio, Zoe, which has just celebrated its 25th year. That's remarkable. So let's first start with your big pivot with your studio, using that word that's that common word these days. Um, you speak of thinking creatively about the online teaching reimagining. Within this creative discovery, did you draw on other practices? What did you need to do to reach your clients through the screen? Maybe I'll start with those. There's one more question, but I think that's good.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start by saying it was a quick pivot or shift, as you would say, because I had like an hour to decide, am I going to be able to do this? Because whoever would have thought that we'd be teaching this way? But obviously I had to get on board and get over that learning curve quickly, which luckily I did. And it brought me, I had to back up to the basics of teaching early on, which was, if you think about it, everything can be whittled down into two categories. There's really what to do and how to do when you're teaching someone, especially Pilates, but lots of things. So the what to do is very basic, just to get a body moving, straighten your leg, lift your arm, stand tall, whatever it is. And then the how to do, lengthen your inner heel, pull your abdominals in and up. Those are, more nuances and ways of accomplishing the what to do in a more efficient, productive, safe way. But you really have to know what you're saying and what's coming out of you when you're teaching in this distance, right? And so that's number one. That was hugely helpful to be aware of that. And then number two, I would say, what did I need? You said.
Yeah. What did you what did you find that you really needed to reach your clients through this screen?
Right. So the words mattered the most, clearly. And see, I want to be clear with my answer. And also trusting that I knew enough to say about the body, to say, take your hand and put your hand on the outside of your thigh, push into your hand and resist with your hand. That's the feeling I want you to have when you do blah, 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 whatever it is, because my hand couldn't be there anymore, but that didn't mean they couldn't get that effect. Of course, not every client, that wasn't available for everybody, because one of the interesting and challenging things was that for some clients, they'd been with me for 20 years. They were very advanced, or are very advanced, and I had no worries in terms of reaching them in that way, because they were so accomplished already, feeling connections in their body, having made them already, and really owning their practice of Pilates, so that they had a whole world of stuff they could do without the equipment. You could do a whole session of Pilates on the mat as if you're on the equipment, a reformer mat, we would call it, doing exercises without the support of the springs and the resistance, etc., just you and gravity. But for people who had just started, I had clients who'd been here maybe half a dozen times, and then the shutdown happened. Those were the ones I had to go back to the pre-Pilates, we call it, exercises, which are the nuts and bolts of everything. I mean, the method is so beautiful in that it just gets more complex and as you advance, but they're all, you can find the basic exercises, the core exercises in all of the advanced work too. So really teaching them the fundamentals from the beginning, and using, your dining room chair, sit on the edge of your chair and sit up tall and press your feet into the floor so you can access things that you would normally feel here on a different pieces of apparatus, you could simulate in some way. And you said, did I draw from other disciplines or something like that was the question, right?
Yeah. Did you find, yeah.
I found that it was so helpful I've studied yoga now for, oh my gosh, 2 decades now. I mean, not to the extent of Pilates, it's not a daily practice, I will say, but it's consistent and I love it. And I draw things from it when I need to as a teacher, from learning from other teachers, other disciplines, you can gain insights into ways of reaching students, obviously. But there were also a lot of safe things that I could trust teaching this way in this format that were inroads to the Pilates exercises, actually, like things that helped them with alignment. You use a lot of props in yoga, straps and bolsters and blankets, and they had most things like that at home or could easily get them. So yeah, that was a blessing.
You're speaking about Iyengar yoga, right?
I'm speaking Iyengar yoga, yeah. And I don't, I'm not the expert. I'm a practitioner, I guess you'd say, but for a long, long time, and I have really, really great teachers that I'm fortunate to study with and on Zoom. So I only would give things that I was 100%, like anything, 100% sure it was going to be safe. That goes for the Pilates too. That was a big shift in teaching this way, because here at the studio, I have my hand just in case, if you're bringing someone up to the next level and you can challenge them in ways in person, hands on, that you can't this way safely.
So a question that came up because in listening to you, it sounds like, and I had a similar experience with choreography on Zoom. And I also then later on trusted myself to start teaching like some university classes. Only this year, I didn't do it last year. I thought, how do I teach? But languaging, I've become far more adept at and succinct at what you need to say.
Yes.
Because I found in the beginning it was so much that it made it less clear because I wasn't there. So that was really like the paradox for me.
Yeah.
Really learning about less is more also through this pandemic and through this platform. That I had no idea I would be learning.
think about when all of those words are coming at you, and if, you know, then they have to decipher which ones make sense to me. You know, you should just, as the teacher, and the body in front of you should dictate, you know, for this exercise, for this person, I need these words. And for this person, I need these words. You know, it's not going to be the same. That's the difference in a new teacher, a green teacher, I think, and an experienced, you know, much more, having had many more bodies in front of them, then you realize what works for what type of.
Yeah, and it's not, it's green in many ways, because I don't know about you, but well, I'm going to speak about you. I just peripherally, I have like a generosity, and you've always been an extremely generous person, but the generosity and how you speak about what you're giving and the languaging in that, it's like also there's this, you imbue that through the screen. And because I saw it in person, but I could totally imagine and feel that generosity with you through the screen, because you are warm, and you really, it's okay, you're warm, that's one thing, I know that, I've known that for years, but actually you really love what you're doing. And that's a difference too. It's like you really talk about woven into your system.
Right.
This is something that it's, you know, I speak about when it feels good. Like when I speak about moving my hand, it's like it feels good in you. You trust it so deeply. And when there's someone imparting knowledge from that place,
Yeah.
that's a different teacher.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I
Thank
hope so. I just spoke about you.
So I'm thinking about teachers I've had.
Yeah.
That's what makes someone. I mean, that's the connection that matters, and that when someone has that quality, you just want to. I mean, that's how I felt with teachers. You want to suck it all in, you know, get it all from them. So.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, I'm not going to go down this path, but now I just think of all of our teachers in San Francisco Ballet School. I'm not doing it. Okay.
I might mention later. I mean, I thought of one this morning, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and you spoke about the breakthroughs that came for you during this time. So just prior to the COVID lockdown, you had your hip replaced also. So that exacerbated the situation there. And as well, around this time, one of your sons was going off to college. I mean, huge shifts, literally, in your life. Physical, lot of change. Big amount of change. How did you navigate these shifts, and what have these life changes taught you?
So I'll take those chronologically, I guess. The hip was first, and then Eli went to school. They're about a year and a half apart. So my hip, and I'll back up even further and just say, like, the shift in deciding to actually have the surgery was a big shift too in my thinking, because like many people that I've known and have since talked to who have gone through the same surgery, you know, it's a process of getting to the point where you actually really need one, and then deciding to get it done. And for me, that shift was realizing that instead of looking at it as a fear of what I won't be able to do anymore, I saw it as, look what I'm going to be able to do. You know, like I had to shift my thinking to the positive side, which seems so obvious now, you know, but then when you're in it, it doesn't, yeah. So there was that. And then, you know, then I did the research and I found, you know, I knew the procedure I wanted and who to do it and all of those things. And then it was exciting to know I wasn't going to be in pain all the time, and I was going to sleep through the night, and, you know, things that you just get so used to that, yeah, so that was a good change. And then, like any injury, you know, as a dancer, you learn from injuries, from time off, and then from the rehab. So that also was a good perspective for me as a teacher, not only for clients who've had hip replacements, but yes, that was huge, but just in general, weaknesses in areas that, you know, I learned so many more through physical therapy, exercises specifically for the hip and the muscles that support the joint and all of that. There was just, it was such an avenue in to another way for me to learn about teaching. So that was a plus. For Eli, so Eli, and again, it's not in a vacuum. It's sort of, there's a process that comes to when you get to that place of now he's going to college.
Yeah, he's not 18 overnight.
Boom. And then it's a blessing that you have this kid who's now ready to, and that's what you want. You want this like, open road for him, like go do your thing and thrive. And he was in that position, and he is in that position now. He's doing well. And it was more about, it was a shift in the dynamics of our family. There's 4 of us. I have 2 boys. So Charlie's 16, Eli's 18, soon to be 19. And yeah, believe me, it's crazy. But so that shift in the 4 of us, so Eli leaving, I could have been sad, and of course I was on some level, but it was also like, this is his time to go to, if anyone's going to be scared and whatnot, it's probably him, and I should be in the position of being here for him if he is, as opposed to me falling apart. It's so, and I was excited for him. Of course, it was during COVID, so he left when he was lucky enough to be able to go to a school that was open to be on campus, and he even had some things in person. This is a longer conversation we don't need to have. But so that was a positive. And then the other positive was Charlie, for us to be just with him, which was something different as well. And a silver lining of COVID being that he was home all the time for school. So one left, but one stayed close, So that's been lovely too,
Yeah.
But yeah, so not seeing it as a fearful thing, just like a new, great, all these possibilities that are, happening for him.
Yeah, and your kids are so great. Both boys are so wonderful. And to be out of pain, these changes and hearing you talk about it opened your life.
Right. Liberated, I would say the hip made me, yeah. And I would say too, in the decision to have it, have the surgery, because I had to realize I can't just go play catch with them. They're both baseball players, or then anyway, it was an issue, and or go hiking or camping, any of the things that were more family activities that I felt like, oh, I'll do it, but it's really uncomfortable, and I realized, just do it.
Yeah.
So
it's funny how I think change is getting easier. I think there's less resistance, but I say that and then I'm like completely stubborn anyhow.
No, it's not across the board. I find it all the time. Yeah, that I have to shift my perspective in that way.
Yeah. You started ballet in the 4th grade. After a very brief foray into ice skating, which I did not know. I love that your ballet training, I love this because it sounds so like our time when we were growing up. I started in Balboa Park, and I love it that you started on a carpet on the side of the roller skating rink. Perfect, right? And once you found your studio with Bert Prival, or is that how you say it?
Prival.
In LA, you started additional private classes with Don Hewitt. He encouraged you to go to West Side Ballet, where you would eventually audition for the San Francisco Ballet School, summer school. I have such memories, vivid memories of us in the lobby in that Gary studio. And I loved that Gary studio. I feel so privileged that I was still kind of a part of that old San Francisco Ballet history. We were, right? I have to pause here. How did your early training shape your life, your life's mindset? And I guess it's hard to tell when you're that young, but Was there something instantly that you knew about this art form? Or so what was it? What was the was there or was it just like I'm gonna try this? It feels good right now.
You mean when I started?
Well, yeah, I mean, like the early training. How did
Yeah.
this early training with Don, with
Yeah.
or Praval?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I will say that he wasn't the teacher, his son was. Bert Preval was the name of the studio. He was an older man.
Okay.
His son, and they were not the main, it was the guest teachers. It was a little tiny little place in the valley in Sherman Oaks. It's not, I don't think it's there anymore. But it was a friend at school, just like the skating. You know, we had moved here. I was a new person at my elementary school. And this friend that I made instantly, she skated and said, oh, you should go, it's super fun. And it was fun. I did it for a while, but I really didn't like the cold. I was afraid of the jumping on the ice. And, you know, it didn't feel like me. It wasn't a good fit, and it didn't feel like something I was going to be doing for a long time. I kind of knew it. And then we had this off ice ballet class, is what you're talking about, which was at the rink, but off to the side in this carpeted room. And I think they had a record player or a tape recorder or something. We only did port de bras at the bar and maybe tendus or something. It was supposed to teach us some graceful way
Right.
of, and I loved the fact that we were moving to the music, and I loved everything about it way more than skating, and that's what started that. So then I went to Berkeley Ballet because that's where my friend Carol went to take ballet, and yeah. But
That's
so
beautiful. It's that thing. It's the moment, right? I
yeah, it just spoke to me in a way that the skating didn't. And then I would say what kept me going was what we were just talking about the teachers, was teachers that I was inspired by them, by what they could do and how they spoke to us, and how I felt so grown up. I remember feeling like they spoke to us as if we were, I didn't feel like a kid in school. I don't know, it's hard to explain it, but it gave me another, like a level of myself, or a layer of myself that was different than anything else I had done. I don't know. And it seemed like they saw something in me, and it inspired me to do more, to get deeper into it. And Dawn, I'm getting ahead, but like, into the years then, not just right away, but after some years of studying with him, he exposed us, me and a few other students of his, to older students of his who actually, later in the years. Like we went to New York and he showed us Elliot Feld, and we went and saw performances and people that he had trained, before. And he brought us here in LA to people's homes who were playing, friends of his, just social friends, playing chamber music, musicians he knew. So we would just, it was just rich and full. And
what a good,
what?
what a good teacher.
Such a good teacher, just sharing life with, exposing us to art and just creative people. And yeah, he's so generous. And yeah, it was a really special time.
And did you know Kim Okamura already in LA?
Kim O was at West Side Ballet. Yeah, I say Kim O because there was also Kim Craven. Kim
Right, I
never
know.
came to Mississippi, but yeah. So the
And
Kim.
did you know Andrea?
No, I met in the lobby of the other SFB, the new building. At the
That's
end,
right. I
it was
remember.
actually,
I thought maybe LA.
no, but now for sure.
No, for sure, you're best friends.
But yeah, we met at the end. Okay.
Um, okay, yeah, we went over that. So continue, like the following summer, you attended San Francisco Ballet Summer School again.
Mhm.
And that's when we met.
Right.
Right. And I have to ask you about your experience living in San Francisco at that time, because I absolutely adored it. Like I felt I was the luckiest person in the world to live in this amazing, funky, open, riotously wonderful, energetic city. I felt like I've landed, man. I mean, just with the city. And we attended the San Francisco Ballet High School, and we were a very small part. I think there were only 3 graduating classes, maybe 2. I don't know.
We were the first.
We were the first. How do you think that time in that great city, studying something that you loved, influenced how you see life, how you experience life, how you follow your dreams, how you teach, how you mother,
Yeah. I will echo what you said. It was everything. I mean, that city was also being 17. I moved there when I was 17 and I had 3 roommates. What could be better? It was like I was senior in high school. I'm living in an apartment. I'm in this awesome city. And it was the first time that I was navigating a city on my own. I'd been to New York plenty of times because my dad lived there and I had relatives there, but I was always with, I was someone's daughter or sister or granddaughter, being brought places. I didn't go out on my own then. And so here I was with it all at my fingertips, kind of, and friends that were, and you knew the city back and forth because you lived there, so I got to learn it through my peers, which was great. And SFB, and it was exciting too, because yes, we were part of that older studio, but really only the summer session for me. You had been there longer, right? You were already there.
Yeah, because we lived there, because my mom went to
that was your place, right?
So that's why we moved to San Francisco. But you experienced it.
No, I totally did. And I remember it. Yeah. And I remember that upstairs. I remember specifically people watching certain dancers. I won't mention names now, but like I have so many great memories of seeing, those higher level at the time. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
All the way in the back.
What'd you say?
The studio all the way in the back where Mr. Vilsack used to live.
Yeah.
You had to go up a couple of stairs. I loved that studio.
Yeah. But so what I was going to say was it was also having had that experience, but juxtaposed then with the brand new, sparkling, gorgeous building that we were the first people to go in, right? And I mean, the locker rooms, whatever you call them, the dressing rooms, I mean, it was crazy, right? It was just in the lounge. I mean, it felt, we had a it just felt super special, and I felt really, really fortunate. And the high school thing was great too, because I loved school. I mean, I will say, studying at that level and, being committed to ballet at, middle school, high school, before I moved, I still loved being in school, and I had really close friends. So finishing high school at SFB, it was so crazy because we had ballet in the morning and then we'd have school. Like, it was just unbelievable, right? And Spencer, the director of our high school.
Amazing.
Right. So it was, I really enjoyed that, that way of learning, I guess I'll say. It was really open and very community based. It was like there were so few of us, we just kind of, everything was together. You know what I mean? Like, we talked about everything. It was a different format, I guess I'd say, than the school I was used to academically. And it really, I loved it. It gave me, I don't know, it was one more way of feeling that I was that something special was happening. It just didn't feel like school. It felt like something, does that make sense more?
Well, it totally does. Because Zoe, I'm sure you remember, but our French teacher worked in the PR department.
Yeah, that's right.
She spoke fluent French. She would take us to the Alliance Française downtown.
Yeah.
And we'd go see, like, I remember specifically seeing a French movie with her there. And again, it was like there were field trips at night because we'd go see a movie together. Yeah. And I mean, Spencer was great. I read his college sociology books because he was a sociology major. We had a good education. It was it was like private tutors,
Right. It was more like when Dawn brought us to go hear the music. It was a continuation of that kind of world, which I loved.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot of
adults. It
Say
made us
that again.
it made us feel like adults. It gave us ownership, which is very important for a person at any age, right?
Right. Yes. And there was no one to tell me, make sure you've got time to read that because it's due tomorrow. I had to figure all that out, more or less on my own or with my roommates. Sometimes we did and sometimes we didn't, but I learned the consequences if I didn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. I have so much love for you right now. Zoe, after your first full year at San Francisco Ballet School, you were in New York convalescing from a pretty bad ankle injury. Maggie Cohen, whom you roomed with in your first summer at San Francisco Ballet School, suggested you go to a Pilates studio to take classes with Romana. With Romana, it's amazing. The direct disciple from Joe Pilates, of course. You said Romana, this is what you're saying, Romana made Pilates feel like an art form. And again, it was something you loved from the inception of this idea or how you felt it the first time. Upon your return to San Francisco Ballet, you found the only West Coast reformers. I love it that you searched them out in the city at St. Francis Hospital, of course, with Dr. Garrick, who was a wonderful doctor. And you took classes later on when you returned to have the ankle operation with him, right? Or no, that was me. Sorry.
Whose life is this anyway? That's great.
Wait, who are you? Well, this is the first time my loss of memory has entered my interviews. It's because we're so close.
Our lives are so meshed. Oh, that's great.
And these are not edited, so someone's going to be like, what? Anyhow, getting back to you. Oh my God. Do you feel that this powerful experience, being, experiencing with Romana the first time, all the changes you felt in your body, the strength you acquired, this must have planted some kind of seed for your future, right? Looking back.
Yeah, so I would say yes. So Maggie, and I wish I knew how to find her. I really do, because I owe so much to her and I loved her. Did you ever know her at SFB? Yeah, I don't think you knew her. She was from SAB and she was friends with a lot of people that you knew, but I don't. Anyway, when I went to, and she told me, I was going to physical therapy is what I was doing. What was it called? Where Marika Molnar was?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was not going to Pilates then, and I wasn't taking class because of it. And she said, oh, you've got to go to Pilates because you're not going to be standing on your foot and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she was right. Obviously, it was great. And Romana, I'll just say, you had so many questions in there. I'm not sure what you want to answer first, but planted the seed, yes, because I instantly loved about the method how, can you hear the siren? Sorry, there's a siren outside. Okay, how it wasn't just a bunch of exercises. It was a system of, from the time, what she taught was from the time you start the session, from the first exercise to the last, there's continuity and flow, and the transitions between the exercises, you're taught to use minimal movement and, talk about succinct, with your body being efficient and purposeful. So there's no haphazard movements, and it's all, it's a discipline in that way. And the way you sit on the apparatus, in fact, you never sit down and straddle like, you would on a stool. You sit with two legs to one side, and all of those things mattered to her. And it was interesting to me that it all mattered. Like, it was just this thing I was so curious about as I learned it. And immediately I felt the differences in my body, which was what planted the seed. I just knew after that summer, I was fortunate enough, I should say, that I was staying with my dad in New York when this happened. Luckily, he lives in New York and I had access to this. And I think I went 4 or 5 times a week. I mean, I really lived at the studio. And the changes I felt after that summer were so clear to me back at SFB when I went back, that I knew I was always going to do this. You know, there wasn't even a question like, oh, I can go from 2 feet to 1 foot now on point without even worrying, or yeah, I guess worrying, you know, am I going to be there? Like instantly I was in my center. Not like magic, like there's a lot of work to get there, but like you do the work and it helps. It works. You do the exercises and it works. And it was amazing to me, or it's amazing to me now to think that that was never taught, not necessarily Pilates, but using your core, or Pilates, we call it the powerhouse, you know, back in level 6 or whatever it was at SFB, it wasn't really talked about. I mean, there's so much to learn. Yeah, right. So there's not room for everything, I guess, but it helped so much. And I remember Irina Jakobsen, it was a variation class with her, and she noticed right away. And that was like, okay, I'm right. This is different. You know, something's different from doing this. So anyway, so I instantly loved and appreciated and just needed it. You know, I just knew I needed it.
Yeah. Well, things usually grow from a need and turn into a want, and they very, very often coexist.
Yeah.
So you speak about West Coast and East Coast Pilates. There are differences, and I'd like to hear what those are. In your teaching now, do you strictly follow Romana, i.e., Joe Pilates teachings? I'm sure after 25 years, you've gained your own, what feels like your own way in. So can you speak a bit to that?
So East Coast, West Coast, those, I would say, categories have changed somewhat. When I was learning, it was a much more clear distinction. I mean, when I went back, let's say, to San Francisco and found that they had performers in the dance medicine section of the hospital, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I forgot the name of the hospital.
St. Francis.
St. Francis, thank you.
Where you had the ankle operation.
Right. So, which was a success, smashing success.
Full success.
Even so, the equipment they had, for instance, was very different from what I had learned on the classical equipment that I had learned on with Romana. So they had more springs, for instance, and each spring had a different amount of tension, whereas a classical reformer has 4 and they're all the same. The foot bar that goes up and down, there were 2 of them, 2 different levels. And it was much wider base, so your hand, it felt different, and when you put pressure on it, the shape of your hand on that foot bar, or even though you put your hands on it too, it was harder to make a connection in the back of my shoulder to my back based on how I had to have my hand on the bar. The transitions I talked to you about earlier are so that you could be lying on your back on the reformer doing one exercise, and then you know you need to put the foot bar down, you use your feet, and then you take your handles without ever getting up. Impossible to do with this other foot bar because there is no easy, I mean, these things have changed over time, I would imagine. Then you had to pick it up and lift up the second bar and put it down, you know, different things. So just from a practical point of view, it wasn't possible to do all of the things that encompass the method that I had learned. And so that was a turn off to me. And I was a little bunhead about it, I have to say. You know, I learned this, you know, and I loved it and I wanted to keep doing it. I didn't want to water it down by, you know what I mean? Then that's what it looked like to me. Okay, so those are, and also there were, I mean, I saw people doing these exercises, and I will say there weren't classes that I took there. They just allowed me to use the apparatus, right,
Right.
to work out. Yeah. Okay, but I did see other people working out, and they had learned from, people were learning this somewhere. I don't know from whom at that point, but their feet were more pointed than Ramana had taught. I mean, the arch was extended, but toes soft, because the idea is that this core, this powerhouse between your hips and ribs, basically, you initiate everything from there. You support the spine so that, people feel good doing Pilates. A PT once explained to me years and years ago, physically you're lengthening you're strengthening the muscles on the sides of the spinal column, so much so that there's space between those facets. The nerves have more room to pass through. You feel better. This is why people with back issues love Pilates. Their abdominals get strong, their spines get longer. It feels good. So that's a very, nutshell explanation. Fine. But so the feet were more pointed and the muscles were more engaged all throughout the legs in the West Coast version. Then, Ronnie used to put her hand down our leg and say soft, long, in certain exercises, soft muscles. You don't want to make a calf or a thigh be the point of, side kicks. You should be feeling your powerhouse, and then the leg freely moves, So it's a different quality, I would say. But that's then. Now, it's not so much West Coast and East Coast, but if you're going to talk semantics, it's more like classical or traditional and then contemporary, I guess. And under this umbrella of contemporary are so many studios that, people have now designed and manufactured their own kind of piece of equipment that's sort of like a reformer. I'm sure you've seen them. Places that just have, 20 of these types of, I would say, apparatus. Rana always was very clear. It's an apparatus. You use it to do something. It's not a machine, because machines do things for you, right? So these, I don't know if they're machines or if it's an apparatus, but you have to be in really good shape to do these places, I don't want to name them by name, and I don't even mean to say they're bad. They're just different. It's not this, But if you're not in good shape, I would imagine, and I've heard, because I've seen these people who have gone there and then they come here, they get injured because it's not for everybody. Pilates, taught classically, traditionally, is for everybody, because I've got clients in their 80s and 90s, who started in their 80s and 90s. Because that's when they found it. And there's something for everyone. I can teach them about their alignment, about their centering, about stretch and strength. I mean, there's always something to give someone in this method that's safe. And that's a big difference. And that's what I love about it. But am I going on too long?
No.
Okay. But to answer your question about what do I teach? Is it strictly Ramana? It depends who I'm teaching. So I would say, for sure, I mean, there are teachers that I teach or apprentices or just advanced students that love the method. And yes, that could be a complete Ramana, whatever traditional session on Zoom or in person or what have you. But there are other people where I know I need to pull from something else, like what we talked about before, ways of reaching them. And I would say you teach to the body in front of you. You don't teach a bunch of rules, Anyone could teach a technique, but a concept is, a million techniques to get this concept across. So luckily I have other techniques that I can, use in my pocket or under my, whatever the phrase is, to help get that concept across and help this person, come to their potential. That's what you want, right?
Exactly. And just to hear, I can't tell you how many amazing people on these shows have echoed, no matter what they're doing, you are with the person who's in front of you.
Right.
That's where the magic lies, with the individual.
Right.
And again and again and again, what, in my humble opinion, what I think are really, teachers, mentors, choreographers, whatever, directors, acting teachers, so often they say the same thing.
Mhm.
it's never one way. It's
Can't
about,
be.
it's beautiful, Zoe. It was beautiful the way you said it. It
Oh,
was beautiful. Okay, we're going back again.
okay.
Okay, so I have to go back in time again. After San Francisco Ballet School, so I just want to like, these interviews are also about, you know, you amazing people that have had such amazing lives. You were also a professional ballet dancer. Let's not forget that. You had a contract with Chicago City Ballet, another great city, by the way.
Mhm.
In your time there, the company went through a lot of upheaval. Um, it's like a time now. There's so much upheaval right now in the ballet world. You had a serious ankle injury, and this was kind of when you decided going, like the decision to go to university, because as you were saying in this interview, school was also very important for you. So there were things you had to, this huge life change you had to grapple with again. And you enrolled in Occidental College, and at the same time you were also getting experience with Ron Fletcher Classical Pilates Studio.
Uh,
Um, in this big, huge change that happened, like what was the time frame
mhm.
of it? And then things like going into school, what was your major? What, like, it was a lot of change in this time and a lot of very kind of rapid succession of rapid decisions. So what was that like?
So let me just correct one thing just because I have to. The Ron Fletcher studio was not a classical studio. Ron Fletcher was another, they're called elders, people like Romana who studied with Joseph Pilates.
Okay.
He was also a Martha Graham dancer, and his method, Ron Fletcher method, was one of those not exactly traditional because he incorporated Graham stuff. He was awesome too, his own thing. And I didn't study it so much as it was the only place in LA I knew that had equipment, even though it was different. And I got a job there sitting at the desk checking people off when they came in so I could use the studio. Yeah. Okay, that's that. That was in like 1990, I believe. You're asking time frame. So before that was Chicago. And yes, they went through a bunch of changes. Maria Tallchief was the person I auditioned for, which was, you know, crazy and amazing. And yes. Um, and it was a short, you know, I was there a little over a year. It was a very short experience. It was great in many ways. I did not feel this huge support network there of, you know, it's not really important to talk about now, but it didn't feel uh, like I was going to be brought to my potential there. Let's just say, to use a phrase that I used already. Yeah. And so that probably helped my decision. I knew I wanted to go to school at some point. I knew I didn't want to go terribly late in life for whatever reason. And just a lot of things personally in my family and whatnot lined up in such a way that it seemed like a good time to try it then and to come back to California. I mean, they were going through such changes that I didn't even know there was going to be a company to stay for in Chicago. So they were really in trouble money-wise, you know, all kinds of things. So, and Occidental came after. I went to a community college first to do my prerequisite. Do you remember that? Yeah. And I loved it, I have to say. I had great teachers and that really opened my my eyes to what I was possible. Like it gave me confidence of being a student because I was, even though I loved school then, it was a while I had been out of it, and I was a little apprehensive about being in a classroom and taking on, you know, homework and all kinds of things I was still taking class then, but I wasn't dancing professionally, obviously. So I felt much more comfortable going to ballet class than going to, you know, whatever math class I was taking or English. But anyway, it's because I didn't know exactly what my focus would be. And so I took these general classes at a community college, then transferred to Oxy, and it became clear by then I might have mentioned this to you, I'm not sure. I was actually teaching ballet it was how did I get her here? Jody Wintz she was a ballet teacher from Joffrey who was on maternity leave. And I would take her class from time to time because the studio where she taught was right across from Ron Fletcher. So I would work there and then I would go take a ballet class. And she was pregnant and asked if I would cover her class for a while. And I said, absolutely. And someone in that class was someone who taught taught Graham technique, at USC in the drama department. They didn't even have a dance department then. This was back in the day. So in the drama department, the actors had to take movement classes. And one of them was Graham technique. And it was a couple, actually, Jackie and Bill Landrum, very dear to me. And they invited me to come to a meeting at SC to be interviewed for a ballet position because the person teaching ballet there was going on sabbatical. And so I ended up getting that job and I taught ballet at USC in the drama department. And it was fantastic. It was super fun. And I was still a student, at Occidental. So that was funny to me. I was an adjunct professor here and a student over there. But so by then I knew I liked teaching and I was not yet in that time teaching Pilates. Was I? I don't think so. You're asking for the timeline. I'm trying to be really clear, but
yeah,
I think I knew I was, maybe I had a piece of equipment at home. Little by little, I started getting apparatus and things and storing them later down the road. So, years later. But then at Oxy, I knew I wanted to study more about what I was doing. I had a sense that this was snowballing and I was still studying more and more Pilates. Every vacation I had, I'd go back to New York and learn more from Ramona and that kind of thing. So I took an interdisciplinary major at Occidental, which was you can combine different majors. It's sort of like a double major, but they called it something different. So it was education and exercise science, which included kinesiology and anatomy, and sports psychology and things like that. And it was great because unlike the path that I would say Eli is on now, or a typical college experience where you take these classes and then you figure out what you're going to, in your major and then what you're going to do with it. I kind of had an idea at that point, what I was going to do with it. What do I need to support it?
Yeah.
Should I study now to help me do that, which was teaching ballet and ultimately Pilates. So, yeah, I think I answered that. I forgot the rest of the question. Was there more?
Well, you graduated in 92. And as you said, you traveled with and assisted Ramona.
So that was,
right?
Yeah.
And that must have been a great learning time for you, because, fast forward, you started your own business out of your apartment, basically. And I think it's the apartment, the wonderful Spanish style apartment. I remember, I loved that apartment.
Me too.
And then you actually found your own studio. And how did you find your own studio? And what were the signs that this was the right place for you?
Well, so I did start the business out of my apartment in the spare bed. I had 2-bedroom apartment that I had lived with my sister for a brief time because she quickly then moved in with her now husband and left me this second room that I had a roommate for a little bit. And then I realized this could be my thing. So while I had that going and I was slowly building up a clientele and I was teaching at a studio in West Hollywood, and Ramona actually came there and I assisted her to teach these apprentices because Ramona started this teacher training program around that time. Before that, apprentices like I had been were just sort of a European apprenticeship, you know, whatever, for lack of a better term, you know, like follow me around the studio and I'm going to show you how to do this, you know, take this person, this is how you teach him this exercise. You know, it was very individualized. It was like a individual study, independent study. But so now there was a whole program. And so I assisted her. I was a teacher of teachers. And then I actually traveled a few places where they had satellite, the Pilates studio of New York, I think is what it was called at the time. And so I went to Chicago, I went to Atlanta and New York to teach seminars. There were other people like me, teachers of teachers of this generation of teachers. And we all worked for her. And yes, it was super exciting to do and to be in that role. But the way I found my studio was really, I decided, we lived in Los Feliz. That apartment that you're thinking of is where I still live in the same neighborhood. It's in Los Feliz, which is east of Hollywood and west of Pasadena, which is where I am now. And in my neighborhood and west of me was already sort of saturated with these West Coast, I would say, Pilates studios, but many of them, and I just wasn't interested in starting something and competing right away with something else. I wanted my own thing. So I went east and I looked in Pasadena because it's older. Pasadena is an older city and the architecture is much more beautiful and European and just lovely. And I had a realtor helping me look, but I ended up, everything he showed me was like boxy and low ceilings and just no character. And I kept explaining to him what I was looking for. I really think, you know, there's lots of times like on a Cadillac or on a Reformer where you're standing and your legs, you know, you need high ceilings, you need space. He said, you know, I think I have an idea. This friend of mine who's an architect has a lovely space and he's downsizing. He's looking to sublease, you know, the front of it. And I said, okay, you know, I'll look. And it was, we walked in, I said, exactly, yes. Like the minute I walked in. And I will say the building was from 1923, which is the year Romana was born. I'm like, oh, this is, are you kidding me? Yes, this is the place, you know. And it was, and it had a beautiful stained glass front. And I'm saying past tense because I moved 10 years ago, 2 blocks west to a little bit of a larger space that also has a downstairs. And because subleases are just not practical after a while because you don't have, you know, any say and you can't negotiate any price very well. They just kind of, it just went hot. Yeah, it was not a good experience after, I mean, I was there for like 16 years or something. Yeah, 16 years, but it got really, really expensive and I didn't have, I had more freedom in my own, with my own lease. Anyway, so yeah.
No,
So the building was also beautiful, though, I have to say. I got very lucky. They're both historical buildings, historical, you know, in Pasadena. Sorry, they're both.
yeah, it was a beautiful studio. I remember that. Yeah, it must have been hard, but also again, you know, what you're showing through this interview is that, you know, I mean, these shifts and these changes, you know, if you don't make them, you never know what's going to be out there, right? And like so many people I interview, you know, these changes just embrace it because look where it is. So now you have just 2 blocks away, a historical, you're in a beautiful building again. So, and you know, more space and also a new start in a way.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. No, and this, I love this studio. It's actually, I mean, the first one, I mean, your first is your first. But, you know, it was so exciting to have a space to call my own. But this one was also exciting to come to this space because my clients were excited by it too. You know, then I was starting out and I didn't have any, you know, it was just a different thing. But here, everyone was excited for the change, which was pretty cool. And it's a beautiful street. And we look, our view is this lovely old church across the street, takes up the whole block. So just aesthetically, we see beautiful things out the window. And yeah, it's really nice. It's a good place to
Oh,
be.
that's gorgeous. Well, Zoe, we're to the last 3 questions that I ask everybody. Firstly, in supporting and building a more equitable, well, I'm going to say dance community, but let's say, you know, community also that, let's say your community. what are some specific daily practices that one can be active with?
I was wondering if you were going to revise that a little bit yeah, because I would say I feel a degree or so removed from the dance community. I mean, I think building an equitable community starts at home. And I know my husband and I have done our best to raise children or people with open hearts and kindness. And this is not a judgment on any other parents, but we chose to put them in public schools that are diverse, and they grew up in a community that reflects the city in which they live. So I think exposing kids to what's out there and making choices, thinking about the choices that you make and how they, what you're modeling, what is it that you spend time and money on? Where do you go? What businesses do you support? What arts do you support? I mean, I was thinking about the dance world too, and you can speak to this more than I can because you just said the community is in flux or the dance world is changing. But if more artistic directors and ballet masters could groom and mentor people that don't look like them, is that happening more? I would hope.
And well, it's really not my interview. We talk a lot about this on with in other interviews. There's a lot more conversation, and there's some trailblazers like Teresa Ruth Howard and a lot of other amazing women and men that are raising these questions and also being active more. It's really, it's talk is great, and like you said, it's about the education and the doing of it, the practicing of it. And I think that that's an across the board shift that needs to keep growing. It's just in process and in progress. And I think the heartening thing the hope would be that it stays in that place, that we're in progress and process together.
That's right.
With knowing that there's enough room and that we are better together. We're better when we're sitting side by side at this huge table.
Absolutely.
Together, creating
a round table or a table with many leaves.
Exactly. Dreaming together.
Yes.
Exclusionary practices and the scarcity practices, that taking the onus off of one representation, and making it so we have
a more rich experience, right? I mean,
it looked like, the real face of America. That's real, exactly. That's anyhow. Education was what you brought up with your kids, and that's a huge, if not one of the most important aspects. How you raise your young to go forward in this world and make it a better world.
Right.
So, you're a creative person, very creative person. So I'm going to ask you one of your spontaneous, because I always have to say this, there are many, but one of your favorite impactful memories from your big creative life.
I think the thing I keep thinking of when you say that, impactful was, so one of the times that Ramona flew from New York here to co-teach one of those seminars with me, it was before I had my studio, and I was working at this, it's called Performing Arts Physical Therapy. And she was teaching the seminar there, and I was assisting her there. So I would pick her up from the airport and normally take her to her hotel and that kind of thing. And this time I said, we have one stop to make before we go. And I brought her, I had just gotten the keys basically and signed the lease to my studio, and I hadn't told her. And so we went there, and she said, where are we going? I said, you're going to see just a minute, kind of thing. And I think she kind of, as we got closer, figured it, because it seemed sort of inevitable that it was going this direction, that I was going to end up having a place. Anyway, so we went in and she loved it and talked about how it reminded her of the old studio on 8th Avenue with Pilates, and how the high ceilings and the, there was like a relief, and I told her it was 1923 building, which was, you know, great and special. And I showed her where the dressing rooms were going to be and how I was making them. And it was just these simple, I had bought these old metal poles that looked very much like part of a Cadillac, you know, the top railing of the, with curtains that one of my clients actually offered to make, which made it more special. And she said, oh, that's exactly, they used to have a changing room with just a, you know, it was like very simple, and she loved it. And it was like it was just like a, what's the word? Like she was giving me her approval, like a stamp of approval from her. And it just meant the world to me. Yeah. And that she was the first person really important to, obviously very important to me, but that I could share it with. And yeah, it was like christening the space or something. It was great. So,
You know, I was there with you before you even got it up and running. You had basically just gotten it, and you were showing me too.
okay.
What dressing room we're going to be. It's amazing. I remember I was there. It was like, wow, it's going to be. And there was that upper level, right?
Right, that's where Michael was his name, the architect. So he had the downstairs and upstairs, and then when he downsized, he just moved up because he got rid of all his other employees, and then I took the downstairs, and then I expanded into the back of the downstairs, and then I moved here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then what insights can you share about living, you know, your comprehensively creative life and your reimagining? You know, what insight, if there's one or two that you can share for people who are thinking, what do I do now, or how do I keep going, or
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I think this is going to sound, I don't want to sound like a cop out to the question, but I think like every life is creative just by the singular act of, right? Your experience, my experience. And I think just when I think about, well, I guess a couple things. Insights into being creative, is that what you said? How did you phrase it?
what kept you going? Like, what were the things? That's what I mean by insight.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I think a lot of it is letting go of fear, which shuts me down. If I can, it's like my hip and like the change with Eli and things like that we talked about. If there's a fear and all I can, if that's the feeling that I have, then it shuts me down from all of the stuff that I could be accessing, that could be adding to my world. And instead, it's like a wall. And I have to work hard. I mean, this is my own thing. I know I need to work hard when that happens to shut that down and instead embrace what's possible. So I would say staying aware of your surroundings and in the moment and breathing is the most important thing to access that creativity. You know what I mean? Like I know there are little exercises people, I don't mean to belittle them, but there are a few things like, you know, choose a different way to go to work today, you know, take a different route, see different things, open your eyes, notice this plant you never saw before, this landscaping, you know, or savor that ice cream cone and taste the, you know, the textures, and the being in the moment more opens you up to a variety of things. And another thing actually that I think helps me, and I've started doing this recently during the shutdown, was making a list at the end of the day. It could be, you know, 3 things, 5 things of things you're grateful for, you know, staying with that, not just a quick little ticking off names or things, but why you're grateful for them, and, you know, spending some time really thinking about it, because it heightens your sensibilities in ways that then for me anyway, opens your mind into thinking about more things that then inform you for making choices and decisions. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being in the moment, for teaching, it's the same thing. It's like that, teaching to the person in front of you, not going by rote, not just, spewing out sentences that you, or phrases that apply to that exercise or step or whatever. But does that person need that at the moment? Being in the moment with someone else, that's when the stuff happens. I think so.
Zoe, oh gosh, it's just been a delight to sit with you and to hear your amazing inspirational journey in your life. And it just makes me miss you even more. I can't wait to see you again and hug you and be out in our California together. Thank you so much. I want to direct viewers to be able to find more out about you. Does Zoe, your Pilates studio, have a website? I assume it does. And do you have an Instagram handle? And if so, can you tell us those?
Yes. The studio is called Zoe, a Pilates studio, actually. And the website, though, is zoepilates.com. And the Instagram account, this is an ongoing challenge for me to keep it up, but I do have one, and it's also at Zoe Pilates. Yes, I'm actually updating more about on the website just this week, because we're going to be continuing with Zoom, even though we're planning to see clients in person once everyone's vaccinated toward the end of May. So it's going to be a hybrid situation for a while, which is interesting. Yeah. Because many people just, want to continue this way on this platform. And
why not?
It's been thrilling because it's been giving me access to people. I have people from other parts of the world now who can, come to class. So that's exciting, and that'll continue. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, you'll find out a little bit about Zoe in the description box below this video, and a short bio from her. And we have new guests every week. Our next interview will feature Tamas, Geza, Moricz, an international teacher and workshop leader, also danced with him at Frankfurt Ballet. Thank you now to Grace Espina, superhero extraordinaire intern. Thank you so much. Thank you to our dance world that's held us up, holds us up, keeps us focused. And Zoe, my dear friend, thank you so much. You're a wonder.
Thank you, Helen. I miss you.
I miss you.
This is great.
Bye.
Bye.